Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Founders Club. I'm your host, Dez DeCosta. I'm here today with Andy Dietrich. He is the author of Play Stupid Games, Win Stupid Prizes. It's a collection of short stories focusing on themes like friendship, personal growth, and humorous misadventures. Andy, welcome.
Des, thank you for having me and thank you for the introduction. I think you hit the nail on the head with the synopsis.
I mean, I've had such a fun time reading this book, and this isn't my normal read. So I just truly appreciate and I'm grateful for you reaching out and, telling me more about it and the fact that I'm able to experience and learning more about you through this book as well. I'm usually more so reading, the self-help and
Sure.
that kind of stuff. But this was a very fun read, I have to say that. So we're gonna dive into your inspiration behind the book, putting it all together, your misadventures. So, you grew up in Germany.
That's
How
right.
did those early experiences shape who you are and the tone and themes of this book?
Yeah, I don't know if the stereotype of Germans being industrious and very dry in their approach on things and very efficient and timely, right? I think those are all very stereotypical things, but I embody all those in my opinion. So it's kind of like, yeah, that definitely rubbed off on me and my heritage and the genes that I've gotten from just, having been born and raised there and been, I was lucky enough to be born to a loving mother that more or less raised me myself. I've had fathers, but not very strong father figures. So no, I just kind of, the whole Germanness definitely adds to the flavor packet that I've turned out to be.
That's wonderful. And yes, I feel like this was such a compilation of stories where people say, "Oh, I could write a book about my life," or "I should write a book." And you actually did. You actually wrote a book. And, if you could teleport, or if a listener could teleport into any of the short stories that you tell, which one would you say captures the essence of who you are the best?
Sure. So I will paint the picture of the I think the title of this story of is when you mess it up for everybody else. So the synopsis is I think it's one of the longer stories that I have in the book. The stories are fairly short to medium length. This one's one of the longer ones. The gist of it was many moons ago, when me and my friends used to go to the clubs. This is early 2010s into the mid 2010s. I was dating a young woman that wasn't old enough to get into the clubs yet. I think she was a year shy. And even with a fake ID, it was a really good fake, but the security was trained very, 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 very well to spot those from a mile away. So that, I mean, me going inside with my friends and having a good time that night worked once, worked twice, but then leaving her out of it was getting kind of awkward, right? Because she wanted to come along and enjoy the festivities, but she couldn't again because of her age. So, I decided to get creative and rub my two remaining brain cells together and came up with a very unique solution to this problem. So fake IDs were out. So I figured, okay, how else can I get this girl in there without, spending an exorbitant amount of money on, table or bottle service or just throwing money at the problem, which I didn't have at the time. I had problems, but not money, right? I just want to make sure we emphasize that. Um, so I realized that when you walk into a club, they give you a little return stamp on the wrist. And I quickly put two and two together and I thought, hey, how hard could it be to make one of these stamps at home? How hard would it be to get a rubber block, take an X-Acto knife, and then just kind of carve it out and make it look like the stamp of the night? And so I did a trial run. We rented a room at the Cosmo. Did a trial run, had a bunch of people in the room getting, having a couple drinks, pre-gaming, and we sent one guy in to get the stamp on his wrist. He came back upstairs. I took a look at it, and of course, it had to be the most complicated design that I've ever seen. So I sat there carving this little rubber block with an X-Acto knife for a good half an hour. It was shoddy work. It was very frustrating labor. Friends around me were getting buzzed, asking, "Hey, when can we get ready to go?" And I said, "Look, I'm still working on this, so I need to get more concentration until we can, see if this will pass." So after about, like I said, half an hour, I came up. I had this rubber block with a shape on it. We're like, all right, well, let's go for broke. So we put some ink on it, dabbed it on someone's wrist, and we kind of compared the real thing to the fake thing. And we're like, all right, if you squint hard enough, I, I guess it was only one way to tell. So I think it was about six of us that we, maybe 6 to 8 people that we sent in pairs of two, right? Just to make it not look obvious, right? We're all strategic about it. We went to the reentry line. And if you know anything about clubs in Las Vegas, the reentry line, there is no line, there is no cover, there is no ID check. There's a little asterisk next to that last statement. We'll get back to that here once I'm done with the story. So we all walk in, no questions asked, and we're like, holy crap, it worked. Cool. I have a proof of concept. Now it's time to weaponize it, right? So over the next couple of weeks, I spent a little bit of money to invest in a Martha Stewart stamp making kit. Came with a little, it's like a little, like a gel block, not a gel block, but like a gel pouch, and then you run it through UV light. It was a semi-professional stamp making kit. Required a little bit of Photoshop work to get the stamp in the right format and the right orientation. You print it out, put on that gel pack, run the UV light through it, or rather run it through the UV light. And then at the end of the day, after about 10-ish minutes, you're left with a very sturdy, very professional looking stamp. You slap that onto a back of a little clicker mechanism, and then you're ready to go. And I got so good at the process that at the height of my little stamp making operation, it took me about half an hour from the time that I got the picture sent to me from a friend, on the phone, about half an hour between that and having it ready to go, stamp and getting people into the club. And this was considering, new stamps. I at this point already start collecting the stamps of the various clubs and everything because they did rotate them, right? So they planned ahead just a little bit, but they didn't have the rotations weren't that large. So I start collecting these as I made them. I still have them sitting around here somewhere. But anyway, so this little operation lasted for about 6 months. And then one day it all came crashing down. It worked beautifully, right? I had people come over to the house. They put down their 10 or 20 bucks for the night, depending on who's playing that night. And that would fuel my drinking for that evening, right? So it was a win-win situation. So the whole operation came crashing down when one day I had two female friends come over. They got the stamp for, I think it was Surrender, one of the nightclubs here. They got it. They went on their way. And half an hour later, I got a phone call saying, "Hey, we can't get in." We're like, "Why? What happened?" Well, it turns out that they're now checking IDs at the reentry line. And I go, "Well, since when?" I guess since this week. So word must have gotten out. Of course, all these club security, groups, they talk to each other, right? So once one of them gets wind of something fishy going on, they all find out about it, right that minute. So sure enough, all the clubs on that date start checking IDs at the reentry line. They do this to this day. So that's why the title is When You Mess It Up for Everybody Else. If you go to a club here in Las Vegas and you leave and you come back and they check ID at the reentry line, that was 100% my doing. So
I think it's crazy that you mentioned that story because I think out of all of them, and you have so many short stories in here, that was the one that just captured my attention the most. I mean, for one, we both live here. I've been here for about 11 years, so I get it. I understand the how strong or how I don't know, they're so strict nowadays. So
mhm.
to know that this worked at one point, and I have it here, I'm doing
There
a
it is.
little, I know
Yep.
exactly the story. If my, okay, hold on.
It came through in
There
the
it
first
is.
second. Yep. No, you're good. I
Well, the
saw it.
rest, they're gonna have to buy your book to
That's right.
actually find out. That's why. So, but it's there, and the photo that you have that shows all the different stamps and whatnot is just so hilarious. I swear, I was like, I think it's like probably the third or fourth story in there. You
Yeah,
started
it's
off with
early.
a bang, and I was like, that never left my mind. I think I've already gone ahead and told two other friends about it at
That's
the
awesome.
time. Yep.
Oh
And
yeah.
so. I mean, that's great. I think if it's any story out of the book, that's the one that's killer. I mean, there's
Yeah.
so many other killer ones too. It's just that's hilarious.
Thank
And
you.
so, yeah. So you went from Berlin to Alaska and landed in Vegas, and that's quite an non-traditional. It's anything but typical, right? So you have so many stories along the way. Can you walk us through any key turning points that shaped you as a person or a storyteller?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm a huge proponent of personal growth. I love self-development, right? I think self-help, self-development get a bad rep. I think people kind of have the assumption that, well, what's wrong with you to have to reach for self-development? Look, I think it's just like going to the gym, right? I think your mental health, your psychological health is just as important as your physical health, right? And there's nothing wrong with going for a jog every once in a while. There's nothing wrong with picking up a self-help book, and seeing if you can get something out of it that may benefit you, right? On that note, I said earlier that my mom pretty much raised me my entire life. I took a lot, from her. That's not really negative. I mean that in the most positive way, right? She instilled a lot of good positive things in me. But I will also say there's a lot of things that she just was not able to teach me, right? She taught me as any good loving mother would, but she was missing kind of that masculine mentor, guidance that I think young men are missing these days. So I came out of I left the home at 18, 19 years old, got an apartment with a friend, joined the military. So I kind of got thrusted into life, quickly after high school, and I didn't have the tools, in my opinion. I didn't have the tools to kind of make the world make sense. Again, she raised me the best she could, but I was missing that key vital piece that, like I said, young men in a very uh, how should I put it? I feel like there's a lack nowadays where young men are missing that guidance from a mature male mentor-like figure, and I think there's a lot of negativity that comes from those upbringings, right? I feel like uh, there's a lot of blame, there's a lot of frustration on the part of young men these days that they think they're owed something, or the nice guy, phenomenon where they believe that as long as I'm nice to these women, they should repay me in some way, right? Nothing is owed to you. I don't. We can go into that topic in pretty deep because I'm very passionate about that particular subject. But I will say that after me striking out for the God knows, the 50th time in my early 20s, and I was just kind of angry at the world and angry at women and angry at not getting what I want out of life. I took a step back and looked at the mirror and said, "Hey, maybe it's me. Maybe it's my actions. Maybe it's my way of thinking." And that kind of, pushed me down this proverbial flight of stairs of self-help and self-development. I had to learn social skills the hard way. I thought that you were either born with them or you weren't, and I definitely wasn't back in the day. And I thought that, look, if you don't have them, you'll never. It's something you either have or you don't have. If you don't have it, then you're screwed. And I thought that, and that was a very misguided belief. And I realized after years of working on it, no, you can learn social skills. Social skills is a learnable skill, just like anything else. But it's like going to the gym. You're not going to have fantastic results overnight. It's something you have to do and make part of your routine. And then piece by piece, you get slightly better at it. And then you start having the results that you expected to have. So to kind of sum all that up into what you asked a minute ago, I think just me coming into my own, learning some social skills, learning or being open to self-development, self-growth, I think has been one of the most important investments I've made in my life, and it paid the most dividends.
Yeah, to your point about sometimes there's a negative connotation around personal development and personal growth, self-help books.
Hmm.
I think it's become less of stigmatized over the years. It's become this movement of like mental health is important, personal growth, self-love. But surely it wasn't always the case, and that's quite a new idea that's still, breaking through slowly and but surely. But for me personally, I can relate to your outlook on that. It's because, if you are the opposite, if you truly don't think that there's work to be done, you kind of scare me, bro. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to know what's going on in your head. But it's nice to know how you've come to that conclusion on your own. And that's all a part of maturing as well. And I can say the same for myself as far as personal development and having been such a shy kid.
Mm.
Oh gosh, I had such the most crippling anxiety and shyness. I sometimes went through school without even wanting to say one word
Oh
because I
my
thought that
God.
would make me
Yeah.
be like the good student.
Yeah.
And I would come home and say to mom and dad, "Hey, oh," they said, "How did it go?" And I said, "It was great. What a great day it was. I was such a good girl. I did not say one word in class today." And they were like, "What? Huh? What do you mean? What's going on?"
It,
But yeah.
it reminds me, if you or your listeners have ever watched the show Arrested Development, there's a recurring phrase of to be neither seen nor heard. If you've watched the show, you get the reference. If you haven't, I would strongly recommend. Arrested Development is one of the funniest, most well-written sitcoms
Mhm.
that's ever been released. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, that's great. I haven't seen it, but now I have to. And yeah, I want to understand your reference more because that sounds right what I was
Mhm.
influenced with as a kid. But anyway, your stories. So back to your stories. They embrace the unexpected. They are quite absurd sometimes in the funniest way. I swear. It
Thank
was
you.
very well written, and you can tell it's like your tone, and that's why talking to you is so easy today because I feel like you completely embodied yourself, your personality, your growth, everything in those stories. And do you have a favorite anecdote that in hindsight taught you more than you realized at the time?
Yeah, so thank you for that. So real quick, the book is broken down to two parts. The first part is my silly stories, right? My mischievous adventures, my questionable decision making, those kind of things, like the story I just shared with you. The second half is a little more introspective. I go on rants, I share some unpopular opinions, I share some insights, I talk about some friends who are not here anymore, right? There's a couple of pages where I'm quite vulnerable to the reader, but I think it's all part of making me, or rather, me painting a whole picture of who I am. And two quick stories I want to share from that second part. You're saying anecdotes, and when I hear that, I think of like lessons and kind of learning opportunities, right? Two come to mind. One, I think the title is "Life is Like Blackjack." And I like that one because it's such an easy, relatable story. So if you ever played blackjack, you know that when you're dealt a set of cards, you have two choices. You can either hit, meaning you get more cards, or you can stand, meaning you hold on to the cards you have, and then the dealer goes, right? And there's other things you can do as well, but those are the basic rules of blackjack. Now, there are certain hands in blackjack you cannot win, whether you hit or you stand. The dealer already has your beat, you just don't know it yet. And I think there's a very, very valuable life lesson in that. There are certain situations in life you cannot win, whether you think you can or you hope you can. There are just some situations you cannot win. The only thing you can do is take the loss, take the knee, and then try again. So that's one. The other one is I think I titled that particular chapter "Don't Pull a Nancy." And Nancy is the main character from a show called Weeds. It was on HBO many years ago. And the synopsis is that she's a fairly well-to-do, middle-aged white woman. Well, she wasn't really well-to-do. That's probably one of her downfalls, is that she was in a well-to-do neighborhood, but she had no money. Her husband died, some things happened, and she was trying to make ends meet. She ended up selling weed to her neighbors, and then the story kind of evolves into her getting involved with the cartels, and it kind of HBO style. It goes pretty gnarly. But the reason why I call it that title of that story is that Nancy had a fatal flaw, is that she was never happy with what she had. So the season would open up with her being down on her luck, her starting from square one. She would then, as the episodes went on, build herself up into a good little situation. And then at the end of the season, usually the last episode of the season, she would do something stupid and mess it up. And then the season would then start anew with her being down on her luck again, having to rebuild everything. And again, I think there's a really valuable life lesson in that, where I say, look, when you have a good thing, stop trying to squeeze more out of it. Like, be happy with what you have. Hence, the title of that chapter is called "Don't Pull a Nancy."
Here I am writing notes because I'm like you're firing off so well and I have all these great like just you're inspiring thought in me. So with the
Thank you.
first portion that you mentioned that sometimes you can't win, right? That's the truth. And I think we can all relate to some situation in our life where that has been the case, right?
Hmm.
But I think one vital thing that we can take away from each of those experiences is having humility
Mm.
and maybe learning like you know what you're not all that what one way or another you may not have completely lost but you may not have won
Okay.
so whatever
Okay.
that means to you
Yeah.
because perhaps the takeaway is not complete loss but to learn humility to learn a new
Yeah.
way of doing things or a way of thinking or maybe hey maybe you really did just fuck up and you have to own up to that
That's right.
right yeah so I love that part and to your story on the Weeds show which I had seen a while ago now
Hmm.
though you're right. It's that happiness isn't it's not a destination. It's not
Mm.
working towards something else. It really is a choice
Yep.
by day or second by second, even at this point, whether you are going into something and choosing to be happy about it, or at least choosing to be content. Let's just say that. 'Cause sometimes happiness is such a strong word that people can't fully resonate with.
Sure.
But Yeah, so like I got those two, downloads from everything you said.
Nice. I like that. I will add it to what you said because it triggered my memory of something.
Hmm.
We don't choose our feelings, but we always choose the actions from those
Yeah.
feelings. So yeah, we don't choose to be, happy or sad. Those emotions just come and go, but we always choose our action based on those feelings.
Right, because some of our feelings are quite animalistic still. And we're not we were still what do you call that? We're still quite we have those instincts that come
Mm,
up.
reptilian brain. Yep.
Yeah, reptilian brain. I haven't heard that one, but yes, I know what you mean though by that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. There.
And it's just
Go ahead.
like, how can we, all right, we're a little bit more advanced human beings now. Let's control ourselves and let's be a little bit more intentional and thoughtful with how we act and react.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a really, really good book that I read. It was called A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He survived the Holocaust. I'm not quite sure if he's still alive to this day, but he wrote this book and I strongly recommend you read it. It's a fairly short read and just the things that those people have done to to the Jews. I even say my people, right? I wasn't alive when it happened, but fair. What the Germans have done to the Jews in those days is despicable, right? There is no way around it, and it's sad. It's really disgusting and sad reading about it. But one of the things that he walked away with from that is that no matter how much of your identity and how much of your freedoms and everything else they strip away from you, there is one freedom you will always have that they cannot take away, and that is your freedom to make a choice. And he illustrates this really, really well when I think they were marching from one place to another to do labor, which is, I guess that's what they were just doing day in, day out. We were being worked to death, literally. And he was describing how he got beaten over the head with a baton by one of the Nazi guards. And back to the reptilian brain, when someone hurts you, I think the instinct is to turn around and fight back or reciprocate or do something, right? And he was talking about how when something happens, that action and then your reaction is almost instantaneous for a lot of things. And he said that the last freedom they can never take away from you is the choice to pause in between the action, the reaction, right? So could he have turned around and tried to fight the guard? Sure, but it wouldn't have ended well for him. So that last freedom, that fight, or one of the freedoms that they can't take away was being able to make a choice, taking that split second between action and reaction and putting a pause in between that and then deciding what you want to do about it. And I
Yeah.
think again there's a lot of weight, a lot of really good value in that lesson as well, that you always have a choice. You can always make a decision as long as you just put that pause in between what happened to you and what you're going to do in return.
That's so powerful and so true. And one of the beautiful things about us individuals is that free will. We don't think sometimes we have, but it's there.
Hmm.
And I mean, in this case of those who were imprisoned and
Yeah.
forcefully worked, prayers, but not quite the same, but quite the same. How crazy is it that somebody in that situation could in fact still find the silver lining? I mean, wow.
Yeah,
Mhm.
there's a I think there is an off branch of psychology. I forgot what he called it, but basically, if you can wrap meaning around suffering, suffering becomes very, very bearable.
Yeah.
And one of the other examples that he gives, once I think he became a psychologist or a psychiatrist or something along those lines in his later years. Again, I'm not quite sure if the guy's still alive or not, but basically, he had a practice, and people would come in, and they would have gone through their hardships. And one time he said there was a man who came in and he's just been devastated by the loss of his wife. They've been together for God knows how many years and she passed away. And the man was just distraught. He did not know how to deal with that loss and that suffering. And then Victor, it's very, very difficult to find any kind of silver lining when you lose a loved one, right? Especially to someone you've, like say you've married and been together for decades and decades, and then they just disappear one day. And then Victor came back and said, "Look, your wife dying before you, you saved her from that by her passing before you did. Could you imagine if you would have passed before her? By her passing before you saved her from that loss, from that despair, from that sadness." And the guy was able to, understand and ingest that and then reframe it and go, okay, all right, that makes my suffering bearable. Maybe I can understand it now. And I'm not saying I assume anyway, I'm not saying it makes it all better, but at least it gives meaning to your suffering. And that makes it a lot easier to digest.
Yes, yes, in fact, that is true. And there's another saying going off of that as well, that growth comes with pain.
Mm,
As dark as that might seem, how true is that? Because even just talking for myself, and perhaps somebody else can relate to this, some of my greatest points in life where I've propelled furthest or faster on a faster timeline was after transcending large amounts of pain.
mm,
Usually that came after a breakup or something of that nature where it's like, all right, gotta lock in, as they say
yeah.
today, let's lock in, let's figure out what happened, what went wrong, what I need to do better, and how I
Mhm.
need to perhaps just focus in on my life and what my goals are.
Yeah,
And sure, that might differ, that's going to differ person to person, but I hope that's relatable to some listeners, Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, so I feel like at least for the first half of your book, the general philosophy seems to be don't take life too seriously, right? And so you strike a really good balance between humor and heart, especially having your book separated in that way. When crafting your stories, that seems to be the case, at least as a reader like myself.
Hmm.
How do you, I guess, how do you do that? How did you come to that? What was your thought process in doing that?
Can you rephrase the question?
Yeah, yeah, I say, um, how do you strike a balance between humor and then the more serious side
Okay.
of life?
Okay, that makes sense.
Hmm.
I think that in itself is difficult to do. I was reminded once that when you watch, say, sketch comedy, think of like Key and Peele, think of Matt TV, think of like SNL, right? It's very, very easy to start a funny story, right? To kind of share or to kind of go down a path that as entertaining and funny, but it's very, very difficult to make that come to a conclusion that makes sense, right? If you think of like something funny that happened to you, great. You can describe that, you can talk about it, but then what? There's this, okay, what's the final thing? Where's the period? Where's the conclusion to that story? That's difficult to do. And I think that I was trying to when I was sharing my silliness and my misadventures, I was trying to, maybe not always, maybe I may not always succeed, but I was trying to pepper in some sort of, huh, okay, I get it. There were some sort of life lessons, some sort of takeaway, some sort of epiphany, some sort of aha moment where, all right, that makes sense. There's something that I can take away from this story. Some of them just have, some of them don't have any insight, right? Some of them just are really silly stories of something that I observed, and there's nothing to learn from it. But again, I was trying really, really hard to make the stories kind of unfold themselves in a way that it laid out what happened, and then at the end there was a conclusion. There was a very approachable finish and a very natural pause in this story. So if it came across like that, and that's what you're telling me as a reviewer, having read the stories, that's exactly what I was trying to do. So thank you.
Yes, I will say that after every story, I did take a pause, especially by the way that you structured it as well. And I was either finding myself laughing, chuckling, smiling, or thinking, like, because certain stories had an open end or, a way that left readers just leaving their own conclusions.
Mm,
So I felt like that exactly hit the mark.
good. Thank
So,
you.
yes, of course. And, after writing this collection of short stories, what's next on the horizon for you? What do you got brewing?
Get rich and famous, hookers and blow. Right? No, no, I'm kidding. um, So, okay. So right now I'm in, I wrote the thing, and right now I'm just trying to get the word out. I'm doing podcasts. I'm getting people like you involved in it. I'm trying to start a social media presence, and that's still kind of unknown to me. There's some gray area. There's some sort of some fog that I'm trying to go through to get to the next step. In my head, I've done the hard part, right? I wrote the damn thing. So now it's a matter of, okay, what do I do with it now? Kind of like when you're given um I don't know. I'm reminded of like a cartoon, like a comic strip, right? Be like a kid saying, "I want this, I want this, I want this." Okay, here, have it. Okay, now what? What do I do with it? Right?
Yeah.
I'm in the same position of I got it, I wrote it, and then now what? Right? That's the next stage in the evolution of this. Um, so yeah, so things are being worked on that path. We'll see where it goes. I'm hoping it's going to go in a positive direction, and hell, if I can have it my way, I'm gonna, become rich and famous off of it. But I will say that I'm not, it's not like I'm trying to buy a lottery ticket with the hopes I'm going to become rich and famous off of that. I have a big boy job. I work in IT, right? I make decent money. I have a comfortable life. This was just a passion project, a labor of love that if it goes somewhere, great. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't, right? It doesn't have to have this pressure of, oh my God, this has to succeed. No, it already has by me writing it, right? Me having it in my hand, me being able to put it on Amazon, me telling friends and family about it, having coworkers buy it, right?
Mhm.
I'm successful with that as it is. I'm happy with it, with the way it is.
And that's so true. What a wonderful mindset. I think you've done what most people always talk about. Hey, I should write a book about, all of this. And you did that. You did that. You can take that as a huge success as it is. And so where can people find your book? Where can people learn more about you, Andy?
Sure, yeah. Easiest way, there's a little website I put together. It's andysbook.com, one word, andysbook.com. If you go to that, there's a picture of me holding it up. There's a link to the Amazon page where you can buy it. However, if you would like, if you go to andysbook.com/gift, punch in your information. I still have a few left. I'm more than happy to send you a signed copy on me.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Andy, for your time today. Learned so much without giving away too much.
Mm-hmm.
And so, listeners out there, please go buy and read this book. It's worth it. It's worth the laughs. It's worth the introspection and everything. So, thank you again, Andy.
Des, thank you for having me. I had a good talk with you. Good. Had a good time with you and a good talk there.
Of course. Thank you.